by Gavin O'Dowd at Haypp Group. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
And we're very much looking forward to an interesting presentation, so I hand the word over immediately.
Thank you very much. And thank you all for taking the time to join me today. It's greatly appreciated. Just as way of introduction, my name is Gavin O'Dowd. I'm the CEO of Haypp Group and have been for the past 5.5 years. Prior to joining Haypp Group, I worked in the tobacco industry for the prior 9 years with British American Tobacco, with my last role as the General Manager for Sweden and Norway. Before we get into the finer parts of our business, I would like to start the discussion here regarding our higher purpose, why we exist. Our role is to inspire healthier enjoyment to millions. And simply put, this is about moving people from cigarettes, traditionally towards snus, but in recent years much more so towards nicotine pouches. Now, when it comes to the health aspects of that and how we define healthier on this space, I'd like to take a look at the tobacco and nicotine risk continuum so that we can help understand the impact around this space. So the continuum here shows a broad range of products, with those on the left being the most dangerous towards the health of the consumer, such as cigarettes and cigars. And then they're becoming substantially safer as you move across to the right, with the likes of snus and nicotine pouches being well recognized by all as removing 98 to 99% of the harm of a cigarette when it comes to the harm relative to the user. And it's this space that we are focusing on, of moving those people to removing the health impacts of that 98% for the vast majority of the 1.1 billion smokers which exist in the world today. And when it comes to the impact that this can have, I'd like to just take a look at some of this space from a macro angle on where we get to. The chart here to the left takes a look at the smoking rates across a broad range of European countries. And what you can see here is that the countries to the left, Sweden and to a certain extent Norway, they're not only are they the lowest smoking rates within Europe, but they're below 1/3 of the average European rate when it comes to smoking. And this has been entirely driven by the prevalence and the availability of safer products, so that those people which are the vast majority of smokers, who recognize that the harm that they're getting from smoking, have safer options for them to go and move towards. But what we see here with Sweden, which obviously has a deep tradition of snus ranging back almost 2 centuries, I think is one aspect in itself. But what's also much more reassuring to me in this space is what you can see with Norway, which is almost reaching the same levels as Sweden here. Now, if we revert back 20 years, there was a very limited prevalence of snus in Norway at that point in time. But over the last 20 years, there has been some fundamental shifts coming forward in this space. And if I take Norway and I open it up a little bit more here to the right-hand side, what you can see in the top chart is the impact on smoking rates per generation over the 15 years between 2005 and 2020. And you can really see the radical impacts, particularly for younger generations, of reductions in the smoking rate. You can then see in the bottom part of this page the almost perfect correlation between that and the growth in sales of snus and nicotine pouches for the same generations over the same period. And it's this case that we see here in Norway that we're very keen to bring to as many countries around the world as possible. Now, if we stand back and take a look at the overall category and some of the economic dynamics around it here at this point in time. So if I start off with the global market size, nicotine pouches and snus in 2020 were generating around about 27 billion crowns in the terms of consumer spend. There is substantial growth going through that. Almost all, in fact, more than all of it is driven by nicotine pouches. And we envisage that this will be a consumer spend space of 60 billion crowns by 2025. Nicotine pouches is a relatively recent concept which only started to emerge in the late 2010s. And what we can see is that in 2020, this accounted for roughly 30% of the global sales of the combined category. Already we see that trajectory growing fast year by year, and we envisage that by the time we get to 2025, nicotine pouches will account for 80% of the category. So this is very much becoming a nicotine pouch only category, which is driving this change among the consumer behavior. The next factor in this one is that the profit pool is substantial. The consumers are prepared to pay a reasonable price for the products because of the healthier attributes that they lead to them relative to that of cigarettes. But at the same point in time, the regulators are very positive towards harm-reduced products and the great impacts that they have on society and also on the healthcare challenges that their societies are facing over the coming decades. So as such, there tends to be substantially lower excise taxes on these products relative to that of cigarettes, which means that there is a significant profit pool to be divided between both the retailer and the manufacturer here. The category itself is extremely suitable for online, given that it's very low weight, recurring purchase patterns, it's not breakable, etc. along the way. It has a lot of suitable attributes for online, but yet it still only had 11% online penetration rates in Sweden and Norway in the early 2020s. And we envisage that this concept of the underlying growth of the category, combined with further growth of online penetration, will lead to over 30% CAGR in the years to come. Now, if we were to dig into this a little bit deeper regarding the overall category and where it's getting to, as I alluded to earlier, it was in 2017, 2018 where nicotine pouches started to come onto the surface, and you can see how the growth has been accelerating from there on, and we predict that that is going to continue for the foreseeable future. And this is entirely driven by the strong underlying demand by consumers for healthier products. That in itself is also being reinforced and supported by the regulatory environment, which many of the European governments and North American governments have now embedded into their doctrine of harm reduction as a key principle in how they manage this category going forward. And that in turn, that combined consumer demand and regulatory support for it has encouraged much investment coming in on the production of this space, both from very large global tobacco players and also from very credible smaller second-tier players, which are bringing some great innovation to it, which in turn is bringing better products to the consumer and accelerating that conversion from cigarettes to nicotine pouches. When it comes to the online competitive landscape here, there is multiple players across all of the markets here, but we in Haypp Group run multiple stores in each market, because the more stores we have within each market, the stronger our organic rankings within Google, and hence the more share of the traffic we get for people which are making the migration across to the category or making the migration across from offline to online. We can see that there's a very fragmented other range of players here, but when we look at it together, there is no player around the world which is up to 10% of our size when it comes to share of the online sales in this space. Other players will often come and go, but we maintain and have maintained extremely strong shares in this space over the past 5 years. When it comes then specifically to that as regards to what our share is, we look across the world in 4 different business units. Sweden and Norway are our core markets, and for Sweden and Norway we have had just over 10% and 15% respectively of the combined market. However, what we see is that this is a reflection of the market for both snus and nicotine pouches. We are disproportionately much larger in the rapidly growing category, which is nicotine pouches, where we have roughly 1/4 of the entire market, not the online market, but roughly 1/4 of the entire market in Sweden, and roughly 15% of the entire market around nicotine pouches in Norway. And then in the bottom of this chart, you can see what is our share of the total online sales. And we have roughly 90% and 80% respectively share of the total online sales across these geographies. Now, if I move across to the right, these are what we refer to as our growth markets. And here, when we talk about the EU, it is effectively German-speaking Europe and the UK, which are the markets that we're present in at this point in time. And also the US, which is across the 51 states itself. So if I look at the combined snus and nicotine pouch market within the US, the vast majority of the market is already nicotine pouches. Nicotine pouches is already 7 or 8 times the size of traditional Scandinavian snus within it. We have roughly 4% and 2% share of the entire market in those markets. But what we can see is that while the online penetration is extremely low and our share of the total market on the back of that is extremely low, our share of the online market, remains high. And as penetration levels for these markets grow online, we envisage that, and we're already seeing rapid growth coming through these markets accordingly. When it comes back to what our infrastructure is regarding our logistics setup, we run a combination of own warehouses and third-party logistics, generally local within each market, unless there is a regulatory reason why we struggle to at a point in time. In the US, we have our own warehouse in Texas, and we carry 2 3PLs, one on the East Coast and one on the West. We have a warehouse just outside Stockholm here, which services all of Sweden. We have a similar warehouse just outside Oslo that services all of Norway. And we have recently opened our warehouse in the UK, servicing the UK market. The nature of these products is that irrespective of the brand, strength, flavor, etc., they tend to be very comparable in the dimensions of the product, which makes it extremely efficient to introduce high levels of automation for picking, packing, and shipping. And we have invested heavily in this infrastructure, and it is continuing to improve on our systems architecture, which is releasing more and more benefits of scale as we grow. On the back of this, as regards to what is our performance within our primary measure, which is the growth in nicotine pouch consumption, or growth in nicotine pouch sales. And what we can see is that we are on a constant trajectory of solid, robust growth in the 40 to 50% trajectory for the last 7 to 8 quarters. And we see no fundamental reason in the external dynamics for that to be slowing down. And this is, again, to reiterate, it's driven by consumer demand for the category. It's driven by migration from offline to online. And it is manifesting across all of our markets. And nicotine pouches now goes from accounting for roughly 1% of our sales 5 years ago to accounting for about 44% of our sales at this point in time, and is the primary driver for sales across the group. However, in addition to our sales of nicotine pouches as a total, we also got to bear in mind that our platform is generally used as the key launch basis for all new products coming to the market, for suppliers to test new products and for consumers to trial new products. And with that as a basis, we recently launched products which have come to market in the last 12 months, account for roughly 20% of our sales, which again instills the confidence of the product innovation which is coming into the category and the pace of change which we are driving here as a player within it. Perhaps to move along quickly to our financial targets. We've come out with sort of 3 very clear statements regarding our financial targets. We intend to reach net revenue of 5 billion crowns by 2025 or above. We envisage we will do the vast majority of that from organic growth. Regarding profitability, we will, because we believe this category is very much in its infancy as regards to what the long-term basis is, we will continue to prioritize growth over profitability. However, even within that, we envisage that we will achieve high single-digit earnings over the medium to long term. And due to the potential that we see for long-term growth within this category, the board has determined that we can get a very strong return on the operating cash flow that we generate within the business ourselves, and hence at this point in time, there is no appetite to distribute any dividends. Regarding the future potential growth for this space, the overall category, as I alluded to, is growing extremely fast with 41%, and the online penetration, 41% between 2020 and 2025, and we have been outpacing that heavily so far. And the online penetration is still relatively low in the low double-digit space, and we have a leading market position across all of the key markets where we are currently present in. Quick update on our Q4 trading, which we released 3 weeks ago. Our positioning on this remains very consistent with what you may have heard from us in prior discussions. The favourable market trends continues regarding harm reduction and the migration from offline to online. The nature of our category is it is non-cyclical. This is not the type of category whereby there is extensive amounts of consumption pattern changes at different points in time in the economic cycle. And in fact, we do see that our price advantages of online is perhaps accelerating that migration from offline to online for our space. And we see very limited inflationary pressure coming through on the products because of the high margins which the products are generated with. And any places where we have seen minor price increases, we have been very comfortable to pass those on to our consumers without any pricing pressure being pushed back. Regarding growth, we have successfully reverted back to strong growth in Norway. Perhaps just to give some context on this, during COVID, the Swedish-Norwegian border was shut down. Roughly 1/3 of the nicotine pouch and snus which is consumed in Norway is bought at either the duty-free in the airport or is bought at the cross-border sales coming in from Sweden. Hence, the market grew substantially by about 50% during COVID, and our share continued to perform really well within that. As the border reopened, the market reverted back to a re-established base, and hence we did face a degree of a headwind in that. However, we now see that we're back to very strong growth in Norway again, particularly within the nicotine pouch space. We have sustained strong development in our growth markets, both across the DACH region, the UK, and particularly within the US, where we're seeing some very strong progress within it. There has been some recent regulatory changes which have manifested within California, which we are seeing accelerating our growth in California itself due to a flavor ban for the offline brick and mortar universe within California. And we continue to lead the industry regarding product standards. Every product which we sell on our site, we send off for independent testing before we will offer to our consumers, and we set clear standards as regards to what the ingredients are and what the nicotine levels and what the branding can be around any products which are sold on our sites, and we continue to lead the industry through that space. And we have strengthened our organization across some key areas in order to support the long-term growth ambitions that we have, both for our existing markets and beyond. We're very well positioned to take advantage of a rapidly growing international market to reach those financial targets. We have a proven revenue model of acquiring and retaining customers through the strong value proposition. It is hinged upon the breadth of assortment that we have for our consumers, the convenience in our delivery and shipping models going through it, and the price advantage relative to offline. We are the partner of choice for all new launches within the industry when it comes to bringing products to market, but we are also remain the largest insights provider for the category globally as the partner of choice for our suppliers when it comes to understanding what the consumer is. Our enhanced digital infrastructure is giving us great benefits of scale as we continue to grow, and our strong balance sheet and non-cyclical nature means that we believe we have some great opportunities over the coming years to accelerate our growth as we go forward. I'm going to paraphrase the overall dynamics as we see it within our industry. One, there is just over 1 billion smokers in the world, the vast majority of whom are looking for a healthier alternative. The fastest growing category globally in the harm-reduced space is nicotine pouches, which we are the largest retailer of globally, either online or offline. It is a perfect product for online, and we are the global online market leader. We have a symbiotic relationship with our suppliers where we support them heavily on consumer understanding and on media, and we have a track record of benefiting from regulation, and we welcome further proportionate regulation into this space. We have impressive growth economics where our gross margins continue to improve as we scale within a business, and we have an excellent team with a combination of both industry experience and digital experience married together to drive this organization forward.